Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time.
Coming in as the number one qualifier.
Very easy in the semis. Over a second and a half ahead of everybody else. Almost a second and a half ahead of everybody else from the semis. He will be challenged here, though.
26 Olympic medals. 22 of those were gold. You know his name because almost anyone following the Olympics knows his name. As Michael Phelps stepped up to the starting blocks, the eyes of the world bounced between Phelps and his biggest rival in the race, South African Chad Guy Bertrand Laclos. Their short and intense rivalry had fired the imagination of the press. No one was particularly fixated on Joseph Isaac Schooling. Schooling, it seemed, was the underdog. And yet, Schooling was no underdog. He was no pushover in the pool. Schooling had won the bronze at the 2015 World Championships. He'd been clocking up wins in the Asian, Commonwealth, and the Southeast Asian competitions. But at the finals of the 100-meter butterfly event, he seemed slightly outgunned. Hi, I'm Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. One of the core elements of going on a break, on making your business work for itself, is to have a sales page. A sales page that sells your product or service. And that's where we get stuck. When you're dealing with copywriting and a sales page, the spotlight always seems to go between the headline and the opening paragraphs. Other elements of the sales page seem to have a much shorter, less prominent stature. Yet, it's these seemingly obscure items that become the powerhouse of the page. Now, if you've been frustrated with the process of writing a sales page, there is a quick, more efficient way to the finish line. And it starts not from the top down, but instead from the bottom up. And this is why we look at these 3 factors in today's podcast. So the first factor is the bullets. The second factor are the features and the benefits. And the third is the target profile, even when you don't have one. Let's start out with the first one, which is the bullets. Last week I bought a new car. Not just another car, but a kind of car I've waited for since I was 12 years old. An electric car. An electric car that was tiny, responsive, and had a rich pedigree of car engineering. I bought myself a BMW i3, and I plugged it into the socket to charge. Yes, just like a toaster. Now, I'm no car fanatic. I don't revel in terms like torque. But a week later, if you asked me to describe the car, I'd go into a slight rhapsody. I'd do what most of us would do when we're asked about a product or service. I'd spit out the bullets. So what would the bullets look like? It's the greenest car on the market. It's the most efficient electric car you could buy at this point in time. It's not a monstrous hulk, it's a subcompact. Did I tell you that you can park the car by using gestures? Imagine doing that in a car park. You could do the same for any product or service. You could describe your house using bullets. You could describe your computer. You could describe your hometown or the cafe that you visit. All of them could be described by using a series of bullets. And seasoned copywriters tend to avoid the headline and opening paragraphs of a sales page. What they do is they start with the bullets. They sit down, Then they write 20, 30, even 60 bullets for a single product or service. When you write bullets, what you're doing is you're getting into a brainstorming trance of sorts. So try it. Try it right now. Sit down and make a list of a service like a cafe. And the way to go about it is to break up the service into sections. So if you're writing bullet points about a cafe, for instance, you'd have main topics. One topic would be food, the other would be drink, the third would be ambience, location. All of these will be topics. It's pretty much what you would expect to see maybe on an Airbnb listing online. Those points, they're bullets. And when you tackle a product, a similar method applies. And several years ago, I wrote a series of books that I was very proud of. I'm still proud of it. It's called the Black Belt Presentations. I realized that people get on webinars all the time and they do a terrible job. They also have to make presentations either in person or on audio. And they tend to be so verbose and unfocused. So this series of books were about the three main topics. And it's always a very good idea to break up anything into sections. And these sections were about slide design, about presentation structure, and crowd control. And every single one of those books had different elements that, when you compressed, formed bullets. Let's take a few examples. Let's say we're talking about graphics. So here are some of the bullets. And remember, they sound like headlines. That's what bullets sound like, headlines. So here are a few of those headlines. How to use the power of size to make graphics pop on your slides. 2 core methods to instantly increase curiosity on every slide. Why most photographs or graphics are flat on slides and how to bring them to life immediately. So these are like headlines and they form bullets. Every product or every service has dozens of points that can be covered. So if you look at the pencil lying right in front of you, you could cover at least 10 interesting points about that pencil. In your case, the product or service that you're selling is going to be way more complex. So you could easily generate between 30 to 50 bullets on that product or service alone, provided you break it up into sections first. I know I'm repeating myself here, but bear with me. I'm looking out of my office. I can see a shed. And I see the sections. I see the roof. I see the exterior, the interior. And I can't stress how important it is to break up a product or service into parts. Before you start writing the bullets, break it up into parts. If you just look at the shed, you'll have very little to write. But you break it up into sections, the roof, the exterior, the interior. And suddenly, your brain is starting to cooperate. Suddenly, you're going to have a ton of bullets. And once you have this mountain of bullets, you're done with stage 1 of writing your sales letter. It's then time to move to the second stage, which are the features and the benefits. At one time or another, we're likely to have been to a buffet. Spread in front of us is a variety of food that beckons to us all at once. And so we decide on a temporary strategy. We say, well, let's try a little of everything. About 15 to 20 minutes later, we realized the futility of such a strategy because we're clearly overeating. No matter how little we take of everything, the little bits, they add up to a lot. The bridge from bullets to features and benefits is somewhat like a buffet. With a little work, we can drum up between 2 to 3 dozen bullets. And if we try to turn every single bullet into a feature or benefit, we end up with a sales page that's overkill. There's way too much for the reader, and they're stuffed too quickly. The best strategy when moving between bullets and features is to pick about 7 to 8 of the most valuable bullets. But how are you supposed to know which ones to pick? The act of writing bullets is similar to brainstorming. You have some stunning points and some that are less attractive. In an ideal situation, the best judge of what's interesting or not is the client. But let's assume that you're working all by yourself and that you're going to have to trust your judgment. So let's go back to the Black Belt presentation series and let's pull up some bullets. How examples can save your bacon when you're running out of time. How to get a good chunk of your audience to sign up for more information. Why a break in the middle of your presentation improves conversion. Now, out of those 3 bullets, which ones got your attention? The least interesting was the sign up for information bullet. The examples on running out of time ranked higher, but there's not a shred of doubt that the break in the middle that helps improve conversion is the most powerful of all. So that's what you need to pull aside, because we're going to take that bullet and we're going to turn it into a feature or benefit. When writing a feature or benefit, use a simple formula. The formula goes like this: problem plus curiosity. Hence, the bullet we chose, when turned into a feature, becomes a sort of paragraph. So it would read like this: wondering why the audience claps but you get poor conversions? Speakers thrive on audience applause, yet some speakers get a thunderous applause plus have a high conversion rate. How do you increase your conversion rate? By using a little known break in the middle technique. How can you improve your webinar or seminar conversion rate almost overnight? You could clearly spot the problem and the curiosity factor, couldn't you? It's about speakers that get applause. But these speakers get applause and the sales don't match the audience response. And then right after that problem, we had a set of points or questions, and that ramped up your curiosity. You may have been just a little keen to know, what does break in the middle technique mean? What was it all about? And you would want to know how to improve your conversion rate in your seminar and in your webinar. By the way, it works. It works really well if you're interested in this series on Black Belt presentations. So, to get back, if you've got a slightly expensive product or a slightly expensive service, go with the 7 to 8 features and benefits. Features and benefits usually consist of a paragraph, and the paragraph is about 3 to 4 lines long, so don't stuff too much on the reader's plate. Because when you look at it, if you take 4 lines and then you take 8 features, what you get is 32 lines of text. And that's more than enough for the prospect to make up his mind. If you have a less expensive or simpler product, you might want to reduce the features and benefits to about 4 or 5. There is no right figure, and if you chose to run with 7 or 8 every single time, that's perfectly fine. The only criterion you'll have to consider is, do you have the problem and curiosity factor going? If you have those elements in place, you've managed to write some great features and benefits. What's even more vital is that you're not stuck at this point. Remember the times when you tried to approach the sales page from the top down? Remember how long it took you to get started? When you start at the bottom, you start with the bullets. Then you go to the features and benefits. Now you're moving at a relatively frenetic pace. You could spend the morning writing the bullets, then you could take a lunch break, and by 5 p.m., you could be well on your way to finishing the features and benefits. However, there's still one tiny problem. Having a client makes all this process very simple, very reliable. But what if you don't have a client? What if you can't do a target profile interview in advance? Let's find out how we can clamber our way to the top of a sales page with this terrible disadvantage. Let's move to part 3, getting to the top of a sales page even without a target profile. Do you know when the world had a massive recession that lasted over 19 months? If your mind automatically went back to the Great Depression, you'd be slightly off the mark. The correct answer is 2009. 2009 was what the International Monetary Fund called the Great Recession. It was the worst recession the world had faced since World War II. So guess what headline was topmost in my mind as I planned to conduct a workshop in Campbell, California? You probably guessed correctly. I was conducting a website masterclass workshop, and the headline was about how your website could beat the recession. And then a client spoke to me. She wrote to me and she said, "You're hopelessly off the mark." She said, "I'm not interested in this recession bit." When we write a sales page, we often make a fundamental mistake. We don't talk to or interview a client about the product or the service. Instead, we often write what we perceive to be true. Like, for instance, the headline I wrote about the recession, and that had zero interest for the client. It's a mistake I've made many times before, and I realized that the best way to write a sales page is to interview a customer. But what if you don't have a customer? Now, this is the problem that many of us face when we're just starting up, or even when you're starting up a new project. And finding a prospect, let alone a customer, might seem quite impossible. As business owners, we start to go around in circles at this point. We can't seem to find the prospect, and then we can't write the sales page, and then there are no sales, and now you know how the story goes. Which is why the bottom-up structure comes to our rescue yet again. We started out with the bullets. We chose 6 to 8 features or benefits. From those 6 to 8 features, 2 or 3 may turn out to be extremely powerful. When we go through the brainstorming stage, we churn out all those bullets. It's hard to know which bullets are great. It's hard to know which ones are not. But by the time we get to the features and benefits, we seem to pick the ones that resonate more strongly than the rest. And finally, if we were to narrow it down to 2 or 3 features and benefits, we could eventually get to just 1 point and make that the biggest problem on the sales page. When I first wrote the text for the sales page of the Brain Audit, I didn't have a target profile. It was early 2002. Hardly anyone was selling products, let alone ebooks, on the internet. I had just one client, the owner of a sofa store, who, though very friendly and helpful, wasn't going to be of much use with the sales page of the Brain Audit. And so I took a stab at the most important point, the most important feature, and I made it my headline. Which is why you see the headline, "Have you seen a customer back out of a deal at the very last minute?" on the Brain Audit sales page. I didn't have anyone in mind when I wrote that headline, but it was the strongest headline out of the list of bullets. And so it went to the top. It formed the basis of a headline. Once the headline was in place, I continued to write the rest of the text. And no, you don't have to believe me, because the proof of the pudding is sitting on archive.org. So if you go there, you can see the whole conveyor belt story back in 2002 or 2003 on archive.org. You can see how the features and benefits have the very same idea. You can see how that concept of the 7 red bags and the conveyor belt got transferred to the headline and the opening paragraph. And you can do the same if you don't have a target profile or prospect. You can work your way up from the bullets to the features and benefits. You can then pick one that most resonates and drive home that problem and solution. However, this advice isn't what I'd recommend. The sales copy for the Brain Audit worked and stayed reasonably consistent since 2002, yet it could have gone horribly wrong. The text that I wrote for the workshop, that Campbell workshop, that 2009 workshop, it didn't do any of that resonating bit. Luckily, I had a client who said that her biggest problem wasn't about the recession. It was about the fact that her list was too small. She wanted to know whether I could show her a way to run a business even though she had a tiny list. In the case of the brain audit, the bottom-up method worked, and it might work for you in a pinch. But my advice is to keep searching for a prospect. And there are two very good reasons why. The first reason is, if you can't find a prospect, there's a pretty good chance that your product or service is a non-starter. The biggest reason why a product or service fails isn't because of the quality of the product or service. Often it's because the writer doesn't understand the biggest problem of the customer. If you have the best product or service in the world, but there is no clear need for it, your product or service is not likely to succeed. If you are endlessly searching for a prospect, it's a good chance that that prospect doesn't exist, and therefore your product or service is a dud. The second reason is that you can guess your way to the headline. You can guess your way to the first paragraph. You can use the bottom-up method, but you're missing out on one thing. You're missing out on the emotional language of the prospect or the client. When a client speaks, they go back in time. They go back in time to the place, the situation where they were deeply frustrated. Their language is laced with rivers of emotion, and this emotion is what makes your sales page come alive. The reason why so many sales pages are boring is simply because they lack the power of the client's language, that tone, that emotion. Finding a prospect or client is critical to making sure that your sales page and your sales text gets other clients to respond and to buy your product and service. Now, something is better than nothing. When you're not going anywhere in a hurry, it's better to have an efficient and speedy way forward. So, the sales page from the bottom up, starting with the bullets, working your way to the features and benefits, that's the way to go. That's the way to go in any sales page. And finally, you pick up one of the most powerful points in the features and benefits, and you use that for your headline. You use that for your opening paragraph. And that's how you quickly get a sales page up and running. When the media looked at Schooling, they didn't think about him being an underdog. They didn't think of him at all. They were focused on something completely different. They were focused on Phelps and his South African competitor, Laplace. And that's a problem we have with writing a sales page. We tend to start with the big dogs, the headline, the opening paragraphs. We don't ignore the bullets, but we don't realize the value of working your way upwards. The next time you're writing your sales page, start from the bottom up. In the race to the finish, it's the fastest, most efficient way to go. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. What did we learn? It wasn't a very complicated podcast, was it? We start off with the bullets. We work our way up to the features and benefits. We might start out with 50 bullets, but we only want 6 or 8 benefits and features, and not huge paragraphs, just 3 to 4 lines, 5 lines maybe, because even 5 lines into, 8 features and benefits, that's a lot of lines. That's like 40 lines. And finally, I suggest that you get a target profile. I suggest you speak to a real person. Read the brain audit. See how much I insist on this. However, if you don't have that, don't go around spinning in circles. Take one of those features and benefits, put it at the top, and then create your sales page. And that's the way you need to get to a sales page quickly. A page that is not entirely perfect is still better than nothing. And the one thing you can do today is you can write those bullets. Go out find the different elements of whatever product you're selling, whatever service you're selling, what are the different facets, and then tackle each of those facets individually. And that's how you will get your bullets. Your bullets are the core of your sales page. They enable you to think and to make that product or service come alive. So work with your bullets. That's the one thing you can do today. What else is happening in psychotactics land? Well, the first thing that's happening is we have a product called pre-sale, and we sold it 2.5 years, 3 years ago, and now we're going to sell it again. So that's coming up shortly. And of course, it's ironical that we have to pre-sell, but that's how it goes. So pre-sale is what's coming up. Look out for that. Be on the Psychotactics newsletter. The second thing is the workshop in Queenstown. You want to go to psychotactics.com/X2017, and there's only one line that tells you about the workshop. But if you trust our judgment, you're going to have the best time ever. It's in New Zealand. Come to New Zealand. Come and see where we live, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the car that we drive, which, by the way, is all electric, and New Zealand runs on 80% geothermal power, which means that we're not polluting the atmosphere trying to generate electricity. I'd also invite you to 5000 BC if you can't make it to Queenstown, because 5000 BC is probably the next best thing. We're a bunch of introverts, not me, I'm the extrovert, but everyone else, mostly introverted. Come and join us in 5000 BC. You'll enjoy yourself. So that's pretty much it. Some of you have been asking about the article writing home study. We're only going to release no more than 30 home study. I know it's ridiculous. Most people would want to sell 100, 200, 1,000. We're selling 30. If you're part of 5000 BC, you get first preference. And then after that, if there are any left over, you get it as part of Psychotactics. So that's pretty much it from Psychotactics land. Tell your friends about this podcast, and you can find me on Twitter at Sean D'Souza or on Facebook at Sean D'Souza. Bye for now. Do you still want to hear more about the BMW i3? I have been so excited about it. I haven't been excited about anything like mechanicals, anything, for quite a while. The last time I was excited about something so much was when I got my motorcycle back in, 1993 or so. That's when I was so excited. And I would polish that motorcycle until it was gleaming every single day. And now I'm so excited about this car as well. You have to drive it. It's unbelievable. I would never get into a petrol-driven car anymore. So what have I been doing with the car? Well, yesterday the electrician came along and he got a ride. The day before that, the lawn mowing guy came along. He got a ride. Pretty much anyone that's showing up gets a ride in the electric car. So does that tell you I'm excited? Of course I'm excited. We're headed off for the weekend, and I'll be back on Monday morning. If you're in 5000 BC, I'll see you there. Bye-bye.